Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it. And we're always glad when we have somebody coming in as a member of the legislature to tell us all the things that are happening, not only in his world, but all the people that he represents. Welcome back to the program, State Representative Joe Orgeron, District 54. Welcome back.
Thank you, Keith. Good to be here.
We appreciate it. Now, listen, I think people sometimes have this misnomer that you guys just kind of wait around for sessions to come in and getting ready for sessions at the last minute. It just doesn't work that way. You guys are always so busy all the time. Let's talk about some of the things you've been talking about, hearing about, and what you plan on doing.
Well, being a state legislator is a part-time job, technically.
Right. By definition.
But, you know, like following Hurricane Ida, I allowed it to become a full-time job pretty much. And you can, if you don't watch yourself, you could allow it to be that. So you got to carve out the times for the other things in your life. But for the most part, basically from the beginning, from New Year's all the way up till March or April, the beginning of the session, your calendar you start getting a lot of emails for requests for meetings, and it's primarily all of the various entities that in some way, shape, or form get state funding. And they basically want to meet, and they want to show, last year y'all provide, the state provided X dollars, and they want to show the justification for those dollars, and whether or not they need more or they need less, very seldom.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'd love you to quote me one that said, hey, by the way, we need less money than last year.
No, very seldom that ever happens. But just basically showing, what they're planning on doing if it's an increased ask. Of course, in years where we have a surplus like we have now, the vast majority of the time they are asking for more. They're looking for a little piece of that extra.
And you're probably finding some meetings from some of those people that haven't gotten any money previously, and they knowing that there's a surplus, they're asking, oh, by the way, can we meet with you? Because
there are a few of those, but for the most part, it's those that you've already given to that seem to just ask for a little bit more,
and needing more. And this is a fiscal session, and so I think very often, and some of the reps I've spoken about it a little bit, but you can only have 5 of your own bills that are not fiscal related.
What they call general bills, and anytime you put one up, you could say, well, I'm trying to get this done, and there's money involved. Is that a fiscal bill? Does that not count as one of my 5 in a fiscal session?
And that would be a no.
And well, most of the time it is a no. It really needs to be on basically creating or changing tax or getting rid of a tax or an expenditure, an appropriation specific thing that you're unlimited to. So
and I know that there are a lot of those committees that start meeting even before session as well.
Well, yeah, we did have a Ways and Means subcommittee, and that's I had spoken to it on a previous episode about just trying to make Louisiana a little bit more competitive to our neighbors, such as Florida and Texas. And basically, trying to lower income tax. We are pretty much, at least in Lafourche and Terrebonne, we probably taxed as much as we need to be to take care of everything. Is just basically getting the right tax dollars in the right places that are needed. And at least in Lafourche, this last particularly election, it's doing some consolidation from all the different tax buckets, as I call them. And trying to find a little with the consolidation into fewer buckets, removing a little bit of I'm going to call it the fluff that was in the multiple buckets, and finding monies for teachers' raises and things like that.
And that's been a really big focus of yours as well, making sure that we're honoring those people who are teaching our children.
Absolutely.
It's been a platform that you've been involved in for many years.
Education is very important. I mean, anytime you talk to anyone at SLEC or any kind of economic development, they talk about, look, if you want to get people down to move into this area, A, you got to have good schools. And B is about the housing, which is difficult with the post-Ida insurance issues that we have. It's hard whenever you hear struggling couples saying, look, we're struggling and we're working hard to try to make ends meet and be able to pay the mortgage note. And whenever they find out that mortgage note requires them to get wind and hail insurance, and then they look at it and they get bumped all the way to Louisiana citizens,
Right.
it in many cases it becomes a non-starter. So
Right.
But anyway,
Our flood rating 2.0
Yeah,
is the other
exactly.
thing, right?
Yeah.
That's just it's an ongoing issue that we know about that kind of impacts having people or pulling people in, even making ourselves more attractive to our neighboring states. That's one of the things that makes an impact as well.
That's right. And Louisiana has, in our tax rolls, we have a lot of revolving, I call them revolving taxes, in that a business will pay for a certain tax, like an inventory tax or a vessel, offshore vessel ad valorem tax, and then basically get that amount that they paid back as a credit on their state income tax. So, they pay to the parish keeps a little bit, sends the balance to the state, and the state gives back 100% credit. So it is indirectly a Baton Rouge state-sponsored local government welfare.
Okay.
And trying to, let's try to keep the taxes that the local parish needs, let's try to keep it locally so that all your taxes that you pay locally kind of stay locally.
Right,
And
right.
then
Keep
you
that
don't have to
monies there.
you don't have to rely on elected officials going to Baton Rouge to bring home the bacon.
Right, to have to fight for those
Right. And one
kinds of
last
things.
thing is
Yeah.
the tax consolidation things. People
Right.
people were worried. Well, if we dissolve some of these dedicated taxes to all these little buckets,
Right.
What happens if we don't get what we feel is duly deserved? And I said, well, you vote the elected officials out of office. Start
That's right.
parish council, parish president. That
move forward with
Basically,
that.
you're putting more responsibility on the elected officials, which is the right thing to do.
Surely. I know you guys get a certain number of bills. Let's talk about some of the ones that you're very passionate about bringing and maybe bringing back to the legislature.
All right. Well, if it's a fiscal bill, you could have an unlimited number of fiscal bills.
Right.
This year, I'm bringing back a fiscal bill that's actually a pair, and that is with the. There's going to be a lease, or we're going to definitely have offshore oil and gas leases in the Gulf of Mexico happening this year. Thank God.
That's exactly what a sigh of relief.
And our Congressman Scalise's bill that he's trying to get through in Washington is going to basically mandate that they stay on schedule. So that one's good.
It's a really good thing.
But we're also going to likely have an offshore wind lease in the Gulf as well. And right now, some of the monies that the state, because it's not oil and gas, some of the money that the state of Louisiana gets could possibly go into the general fund rather than into where all the money from the offshore oil and gas goes, which is into coastal restoration and preservation, barrier islands, the CPRE master plan, which we're all concerned about. So the fiscal bills that I'm running are basically a statutory change to make sure that that money gets diverted into those funds for coastal restoration. And the second one is putting that up to the people. That needs to be a constitutional amendment for the people to vote on.
Yes.
So it's two parts that basically says we're going to put it on the ballot in November or October, whatever
Whenever
one of
that
the
is,
two
right.
elections it is. And the other one is, if that passes by the voters' choice, then this is the law that kicks into place, which sends the funds. So that'll be
Right.
my fiscal bill.
I love it because it says let's let the people decide, and once they do decide, let's make sure the money goes where it's supposed to go.
Correct. And we should keep in mind as we move forward that all of the funding, the vast majority of the funding that's happening right now for coastal restoration and resiliency building and all of that in our state is coming from the Deepwater Horizon fines. And
Right.
in 2032, those fines will just stop. and
They'll drop
come
off. Right.
So this is kind of like a process to start squirreling away nuts and start building up a piggy bank so that in 2033, we actually have a fund that we could continue to draw from and continue to fund the master plan.
Right, and again, it's being smart with the monies that we know are coming in, being aware of when they're going to stop, and being smart about how we can use them for the future.
Letting the coast take care of the coast.
Yeah, woo, I like that. I like that.
Letting what's offshore of the coast take care
Care
of
of
the
the
coast.
coast, right, exactly, as it's supposed to be. So those are those two fiscal bills that are kind of tied together. Let's talk about some of the bills that are non-fiscal that you're really passionate about. I know you've had a few of those that have kind of needed to be tweaked a little bit.
One of them is the election bill. We had some local elections where elected officials basically resigned. That their resignation caused a special election. the elected official who resigned and caused that special elected changed his mind and decided to qualify for the election that he caused. And as sordid as Louisiana politics is, there hasn't been a fix for that gap. And last year I ran a bill, got it all the way through to right up to the finish line, and someone amended the bill at the last minute, added an extra piece onto it that the governor didn't like. It got vetoed. So I'm going back. I'm going to just send the clean bill straight through. I'm going to fend off any amendments. So that's one of them.
Right. And again, sometimes you can't always do that. Sometimes it's difficult. Somebody's going to add one small piece that changes the complexion of that, and it can get vetoed at the last minute.
That's
like
right.
you said, you were able to champion that all the way through to the governor's desk, and it got changed at the last minute, and the governor said veto. And again, it's just one of those things that says, look, if you're going to bow out of a race, and you're going to say, and now you're going to bow out of your position and get a special election, you shouldn't have the right to come and try to run for that.
You caused the special election.
Yeah.
You're just causing extra money that taxpayers are spending.
Right. Gotcha.
I have what's called a House concurrent resolution, which basically talks about the benefits of the Jones Act, which maritime
right.
basically supports our maritime industry, or the American maritime industry and security. That just sends a message to Washington saying how important it is to the people of Louisiana. I have a bill that we have a piece of property that was donated near Fouchon Beach at the end of the Fouchon Road.
Right.
That there are some possible plans to make it be a state park. Would be Lafourche Parish's first state park. Be very similar to the Grand Isle State Park in that RVs and campground type of things, all hurricane resilient built, real strong. But there's a statute on the books in Louisiana law that the piece of parcel of property has to be greater than 250 acres. This one comes in at about 175, so I have to make an allowance, a bill that's an allowance.
Well, and listen, being landlocked, you don't really have a lot of options to really fit into that. And people may be thinking, well, Jefferson, Grand Isle. Well, Grand Isle's part of Jefferson Parish, and so we don't have a state park in Lafourche Parish, and this would be the first one. And so I know the people are going to push behind that, and especially because right now, in between Lafourche and Terrebonne, with so many people starting to experience what that's like to live that camping life, I think some people would really enjoy being able to go and enjoy kind of an RV park, if you will, when it's not their home.
Correct.
Right? Because that's different from what they've had to do.
Well, Grand Isle's been closed since Hurricane Ida. And
that's right.
My office gets calls, because I represent Grand Isle, from people in Minnesota saying they keep returning my deposits. I want to come down to Grand Isle.
Right. And so a lot of those things, I appreciate that you spend a lot of time thinking about and finding out about what the needs of the people are. But sometimes you want to push through something that just honors somebody who makes a difference, right?
We had Mr. Clarence Martz, who is a pillar of our community, and I got a few requests to rename a small stretch of highway between LA1 and the 3235, the 4-lane, right there in La Rose. His family owns property along there. So basically, it's one of the sort of bills that you just need to do.
Right.
And it's just going to be dedicated and be renamed. It's called the La Rose Link now.
Right.
And it will be called the Clarence Martz Jr. Memorial Highway, a little stretch of less than a mile of property. So
yeah, but still, for those people that have, and it made a huge difference down in South Lafourche. And so down the bayou, when people make a difference, y'all always find ways to honor those people.
It'll be a good thing.
Yeah. Now, I know one of the things that we've been talking about that a lot of the people are bringing up to you was we look at wildlife and fisheries and some of these changes that they're trying to evaluate and look at. There's a lot more to it than just speckled trout and redfish.
That's right. That's right. There's the foraging fish that a lot of these predatory fish or game fish eat on, and this would be the third year in a row that I run a menhaden or pogie bill. Let me recap. The very first year, it was basically just trying to keep them from fishing as close to the beach as they do.
Okay.
So it was basically just they stay a certain distance away.
Right.
And it was back and forth in negotiation. Ultimately, it failed. It got shot down in the Senate. The second one was kind of a little bit of a different tact in that trying to set a limit on how much they take in the state waters, and it was pretty much, it ended up being finding their absolute best year that they ever had, the gangbuster year, and basically using that number as a do no more harm than your best year.
Wow.
And that one as well failed.
Right.
This year is a little bit different in that it's back to having a buffer zone. The buffer zone will get slightly increased during red drum spawning season.
Okay,
because
right.
Wildlife and Fisheries is already starting to hint that the big mamas and the big daddies that make all the baby redfish is at a lower
reproductive rate.
Well, the reproductive rate's the same. It's what they call the biomass. The total number of fish that are doing the reproduction is lower. And we know that the menhaden industry or the pogie industry, using their per se nets, they do catch red drum in there. So it's kind of like I'm reintroducing the stay right off the beach, but kind of give us an extra little bit of space during the time that they're doing spawning, which is August 1st through Halloween, through the end of that season. And then there's a second component, which is kind of a total catch limit as well. So it's literally like a combination of the first year's field bill and the second year's field bill to be a combo now. But the difference is that new studies have come out recently from NOAA that explicitly talk about the menhaden reduction fishery in the Gulf, on the Gulf Coast, how the vast majority of it is done in Louisiana because Texas more or less has prohibited it or strictly regulated it, as well as Mississippi, Alabama, and it's completely prohibited in Florida. So we're the only ones without the guardrails, and we're the one that get the brunt, and we're also the ones that act as the nursery for all these game fish that we so love to catch here. So it's kind of trying to strike a balance in balancing the ecological resources that we have in our coastal area.
Yeah, and it's just really, really smart to be able to do. And now is a great time because, again, we've got a lot more studies that they're looking at about the redfish, when they spawn, how they spawn, the less number that's happening, and with the reductions that they're looking at for speckled trout. And they're catching those when they're in those, because that's what those predatory fish feed on.
Right, and I always start, whenever I run these sort of bills, I go into committees, and I start off by saying, the menhaden industry is the second largest fishery in the United States.
There's one
in Alaska. That's a larger, the pollock fishery, but menhaden is about 1 billion pounds that they catch in the Gulf area. And if you add up all the products of Louisiana, all the fish that we catch, all the shrimp, all the oysters, all the turtle meat, all the even frog legs, everything else that wildlife fisheries manage, and you compare the weight of that, it's comparable to what we catch just in menhaden. And it's an extremely important fishery.
Yes, it is.
The fish meal is turned into a lot of agricultural, food, animal food. Yep, your fish oil pills that we all probably take for our health all come. So I always preface my attempt at legislation as being it's a very important fishery. I'm not trying to curtail it in any way negatively, other than for the benefit of the coastal ecosystem that's there and the fisheries that we all rely on beyond the menhaden. So.
Yeah, and just again, I think that's what good politics is about: looking at what the reality is and making sure that we're protecting it right now as we protect it for the future, much like you were talking about the bills to put away some of that money for when those monies stop in 2032. So, State Rep, we appreciate so much all of your time and energy. More importantly, coming on and talking about the bills that matter, because you've been talking to the people. They've been asking you for what they need, and so we appreciate that. So good luck in this fiscal session. We hope things go very well, and we hope all your bills get passed.
Well, that's a tall order, but
yes,
thank
it is.
you very much
we'll take it,
for the optimistic outlook.
All right. We appreciate your time as always.
Thank you, sir.
All right, guys, and that will do it for this particular segment of Bayou Time. We thank a state representative for coming on with us today, Joseph Orgeron, and that will do it. Stay tuned. A whole lot more right here on HTV.